Before I came down here, I was just considering that in the studio. I believe I initially met Sid at an art lesson on a Saturday morning. Imagine this. A studio in a smoke field. A storm is building behind Roger Waters' eyes, as he sits motionless with his arms folded. He isn't a track mixer. He's combining anger. 5 bands. He can't stand these 5 names. Complete, bone-deep disdain, not just trivial hate. It reverberates when Roger Waters is angry about something. Rebellion was the foundation of Roger Waters' reputation. It cried out that his music was unsafe. He therefore means it when he calls someone out. He feels that these 5 bands have violated the essence of rock. Real, raw, and loud. The first, which has plagued his shadow for many years, you as well. It began with awe. Disgust was the eventual result. U2 appeared to be the logical heirs to Pink Floyd's political success in the early 18s. Larger stages, grand themes, and stadiums brimming with soul-seeking purpose. For Waters, however, it was all a show. He considered Bono's talks to be meaningless showmanship and sermons devoid of any sacrifice. He said the music was safe, sterilized, and overproduced. What most enraged him? The compliment. U2 are being hailed by critics as rock's conscience. The Joshua Tree and the Wall are being compared by fans. It was blasphemy to Waters. He perceived the Wall as a cry from the emptiness, a guttural scream, or a self-destructive act. A commercial anthem parade wrapped in honesty is the Joshua Tree. He saw no conscience. He witnessed ego traveling from charity gala to charity gala, in fancy jets, while wearing costly sunglasses. The pivotal moment occurred during a London performance. Waters came because he was interested. However, he got up, shook his head, and left the stage halfway through the set, after Bono gave yet another soapbox speech about rescuing the world. "It's all smoke and no fire," he murmured as he left. What began as awe turned to disdain because, to Waters, rock wasn't meant to make you feel good about nothing. It was meant to make you uneasy enough to take action. The Legends, the following band, lost their essence to stadiums, in his opinion. The Rolling Stones, they used to be rebels. They then developed into a brand. In the 16s, Waters was a fan of them. Who didn't? Their riffs were dangerous, soulful, and swaggering. They gave the impression that pandemonium was cool. However, as time passed, something changed. The edge became dull. The tours were enormous. Between designer goods and lighting systems worth millions of dollars, the message was lost. The Stones ceased opposing the world and began profiting from it, according to Waters. Their previously natural, unpolished blues became a well-practiced routine. Baby Lemonade isn't anything I recall. Well, all right. In my opinion, that time period was somewhat of a treasure when it came to being clad in commercial gloss and nostalgia. He viewed them as parodies of who they used to be. Rock stars protest for financial gain and exchange grit for glamour. It was principle, not personal. Although they offered comfort, he thought they had the ability to push boundaries. He saw their late career albums as hollow relics of their former glory. The conflict was genuine, not only philosophical. In the 1990s, Waters allegedly got into a fight with Stones staff members backstage at a European festival about sound checks and performance orders. When one of the Stones tour organizers brushed Waters off as being too political for the audience, tensions increased. He couldn't shake the mild hum. The gap grew colder from then on. Invitations were not accepted. Interviews were replete with backhanded comments. The industry understood there was animosity beneath those grins, even though the two sides never publicly clashed. Therefore, his response to the question of whether he would ever share a stage with them was immediate. He had no desire to perform in a circus. He desired a revolution. The band he dubbed the shopping mall soundtrack then appeared. Coldplay. Too tidy. Too cautious. Too secure. Roger Waters thought that Coldplay was everything that rock shouldn't be. Music without bite, emotionally numb, overly sanitized, and devoid of danger. He perceived their sound as packaging rather than a goal. Made to fit in with tech business advertisements and elevators, he never concealed his disdain for mainstream rock. Coldplay became his main target because of their stadium-sized niceness, pastel aesthetics, and glistening optimism. He compared them like a cozy blanket by a fire in terms of music. It was not their fame that enraged him. Their emptiness was the cause. Songs that are essentially hollow but were written for large sing-alongs. Waters heard disinterest behind the solidarity of their chants. Just feel-good music for those who are too tired to give a damn. No edge, no intensity. Coldplay hovered over the earth as it burnt, among violence, corruption, and collapse. never pointing fingers, never questioning the mayhem. It was escapism, not neutrality, and a violation of the purpose for which music was created. Incite, disturb, and consider. He didn't see soul in Coldplay. He recognized strategy, cleaned and sanitized for human consumption. Their songs weren't anthems to him. They were lullabies for a generation that was preoccupied. He didn't simply dismiss their music. It fostered silence, which he refused. He argues that the next band destroyed legacy rock. Waters saw Muse as a warning story, a band that had all the instruments but none of the reality. He saw their presentations as soulless cacophony, despite their dazzling displays of light and sound. He perceived their use of imagery as a diversion from the absence of substance in their lyrics. Although they flirted with insurrection in their lyrics, they never really committed. It felt calculated and safe. He said they were imitating the opulence of Pink Floyd, large-scale soundscapes, dramatic crescendos, and somber themes, but without the unadulterated passion, pain, and blood that had always inspired his own writing. Rebellion was not a mood for Waters. There was a scar. There was also conflict behind the scenes. Waters reportedly asked why Muse had been assigned the headlining role at a charity event where both were due to perform. Their message, in his opinion, was shallow and unworthy of the attention given to artists who had something meaningful to say. Although their teams never publicly battled, industry insiders speculated that Waters was irritated. To him, Muse's subtle references to Floyd-style production, without Floyd's level of nuance, felt like a tribute devoid of respect, and like theft without comprehension. Waters didn't mind admiration, but he couldn't forgive imitation without wisdom. Muse represented a generation that cared more about how they looked than how they sounded like revolutionaries. And the last band, the one that made him angry instead of apathetic, considered Dragons. In an interview, Waters laughed not in a good way when questioned about them. He raised an eyebrow as if the question had just insulted him. "Are we really calling this rock?" he asked. For him, Imagine Dragons were the fast food of music. For optimal palatability, it should be mass-produced, packaged, and predictable. They were the epitome of resistance that had been commercialized. He contended that the type of music that fills arenas, but depletes meaning, is anthemic choruses devoid of conflict, loud tunes that have nothing to say. Instead of seeing them as a band, he saw them as a brand, a commodity that was customized for halftime shows and algorithms, and wrapped in guitars and neon. Having previously composed songs that denounced violence, spying, and insanity, Waters recognized in Imagine Dragons, a band that stood for nothing yet was nevertheless everywhere. They were lacking in more than just content. They acted as though they had it. He once claimed that nothing is worse than passing off noise as revolution. He was not merely against them. He detested what they stood for. The preference for marketability above message, and the victory of style over soul. To him, their music sounded like drum machine denial in a burning world. Music has always been held to higher standards by Roger Waters. More honesty, more fire, more courage. Music wasn't background noise to him. It was a weapon, a yell, a rhythmically timed wound. Entertainment wasn't the point. Confrontation was the issue. He felt that these 5 bands were lacking, not because they lacked talent, but more because they lacked the courage and lust for blood. They played it safe, smoothed off their edge, and refined their sound. That was the ultimate betrayal to Waters. Of aim, not of genre. He recalled the days when you could be banned for a lyric. When rock music was more than simply art, it was resistance. And when an album sleeve provoked discussion in Parliament, it was his gift to the world. He anticipates receiving that in exchange. Waters has nothing against headlines. He cared, which is why he loathed. Because he thought that when the world whispered, music should roar. Instead of being a compliment, such art should feel like a punch. That it ought to transform stages into battlefields, rather than advertising signs. He had no desire for fame. Impact was what he desired. Fans weren't what he wanted. He desired combatants. He was looking for march music, not mall music. Songs that questioned authority rather than playing around with algorithms. And he's not looking for solace when he hears now. He is looking for rebellion, truth that stings, and music that wakes up the world that is asleep. The majority of what he hears is simply too quiet. Not within my bowels, purpose, or self. He felt that when the world needed volume, the industry became too silent. According to Roger Waters, your music might as well say nothing at all, if it doesn't question anything.